Welcome back to the Mike Dillard Podcast. Today, guys, I'm coming to you from Cancun, Mexico, where I'm going to be attending the wedding of one of my longest and dearest friends tomorrow evening. So if the sound's off here a little bit at the intro, don't worry about it. The real recording of today's amazing interview was done back in the studio, so the sound quality of that portion is going to be excellent. Now, as for today's show, you're about to meet an incredibly smart gentleman by the name of Ajit Nawalkha. Now, you may not know Ajit by his name just yet, but you certainly know the company that he's helped build and scale as their CEO and partner, MindValley. So MindValley was founded by my friend Vishen Lakhiani nearly a decade ago, and with Ajit's help, they've grown it into one of the largest and most successful personal development companies in the world with multiple 8 figures per year in revenue. Today, we've got just such an amazing opportunity. Ajit is going to take you behind the curtain and teach you how they've managed to grow into the company that they have and the brand that they have. You're going to learn the 3 primary decisions and changes that they made when it came to their marketing that took them from a short-term revenue-based mindset into a long-term mindset where it was all about brand. You're also going to find out which shopping cart and email service providers they use, how they grew their YouTube channel to more than 1 million subscribers, and much, much, much more. This is an incredibly rare opportunity to learn from a man with a true rags to riches story, as you're going to find out here today, and the decisions that allowed him and Vishen to build one of the most successful and respected companies in the world. With that being said, please welcome Ajit Nawalkha. Ajit, welcome to the podcast.
I'm excited to be here, Mike. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you and I got a chance to meet about a month ago at Ryan Moran's house, and that was a super fun event and a great chance to finally get to meet you. And I'm glad we're getting the opportunity to chat today because I've got a ton of questions about your story and your role over at MindValley, which I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with. I know I do. But before we dive into that, I would love it if you would tell everybody about how you met Vishen and became such an integral part of MindValley.
Sure. So I was born in India. I was born in a small house of 23 other people sharing the space. It's called a joint family in India, which basically means you live with your cousins and your grandparents cousins and your parents' cousins, and everybody shared the same space in the same house. And growing up that way kind of got me curious about saying, how do you get out of a situation like this? You know, in my teens, I made an early decision out of anger and frustration, actually, to say, I need to get abundant. I need to be able to create something for myself and for my life, which threw me on a path which was rather unconventional for an Indian kid. Like in India, you're expected to be a doctor, an engineer, and an accountant. And if you're none of those, you're probably useless. So for me, it was an unconventional path to really find what is it that I'm most excited about, which drove my curiosity to join international student organizations and work for NGOs and work for companies at a really, really early age, leading me up to one of the companies that I last worked for was a media house in India. It was a newspaper. It is still one of the largest newspapers in the country. And I was one of their top sales personnel. And because I was so curious about what else to do and how to create like an abundant life, and what's my path to it, I was very eager to propose ideas to them. And I would propose a lot of ideas. And one of the ideas that I proposed stuck, which was a social media. This was 2007 we are talking about. This is pre-Facebook days for India, at least. It was starting to get traction here in the United States, Facebook, but it wasn't really that big or even known that much in India. For that matter, I don't think it was even available in India for people to be able to make an account there. So that was the time where we said, okay, we should create a social network type of thing. I started working on that, built the technology to be able to run it. And right around that time, Facebook came to India and basically took any potential that we might have had at the time to be able to build a network, because our network wasn't a superior technology, wasn't a different idea. So it wouldn't have stuck really. But what it turned me on to was internet. I got curious about the potential of what is possible if you understand technology just a little bit, because we were not building an overly complicated software. We were destroyed because a really big competitor showed up with a very superior technology, but you could possibly create great change and create a lot of wealth, honestly, using the power of the internet. And so in my time at a voluntary student organization, it is an international student organization that facilitated exchange of students across the world. I got introduced to one of the guys there, and I kind of started to reach out to people around the world and say, hey, do you know any company that is doing something cool in the space of internet? And would you be able to introduce me to them so I can kind of see if there's an opportunity to learn from them? One of those kids was in Malaysia, and he kind of replied back to me and said, listen, I don't have a big corporation that you can join, but I know this little company. It has maybe 10, 15 people, and it operates out of a house. But the founder of the company is an ex-ISICer, which is the organization that I was a part of as well. So the company culture is really good, and they focus a lot on learning. So maybe you want to interview that. That company was MindValley. So that's how I got introduced to MindValley, because of the curiosity of saying, I need to learn something about the internet. And Vision had already started doing a little bit around MindValley. MindValley was maybe a couple of years old at the time. It was a very small enterprise. And that got me introduced to Vision as an intern with the company. Now, I would go on to spend 7 years directly working on building the company, and then, of course, being a partner of the company, which I am right now. But for the first 7-8 years of my association with the company, I was directly working in some capacity to build a company, and that's kind of how I met Vision and how we started the journey at MindValley.
So, what can you tell us about the size of MindValley these days? If there's anything you can share, revenue-wise or audience-wise.
Well, I'm not at the liberty of sharing the revenue. That's just because of investor relations.
Sure.
But we are about 300 employees. We have about 52 countries right now, from what I recall, in our offices, different parts of the world. We operate from 3 different locations. We have offices in 3 different locations across the world. The biggest being in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We work with very few authors, but we interact with over 3 million people, different through email lists or Facebook and other social media channels.
And what was the big inflection point, and when did it take place? Because, I've had a chance to hang out with Vision several times over the years. And the last time I saw him was probably 4 or 5 years ago at a Peter Diamandis event. And I don't remember exactly what he mentioned, but I know we talked about the size of MindValley at the time. And I don't think you guys were doing 8 figures a year just yet. And you probably had 50 employees, maybe around that. So what changed? Like, what allowed you guys to grow? And I know you mentioned investors just a second ago. So did you guys take on venture capital?
No, not venture capital. These investors who are invested in the business as you can say, what do you call the board? You can call them the board in a way.
Okay.
And we've been recommended not to share revenue numbers explicitly. So here is, and I can't say there is one inflection point for the company, because and you know enough about this, Mike, as well. There is no one thing that makes the company. It's many things that happen at different times that make the company. So I would like to share a few of those so you can get like a gauge of it. But each of those led to tremendous impact in the returns that the company was having, or the significant growth of the company. Would that be okay? Or
that'd
you want
great.
me to give like just one? Okay,
no,
cool.
That'd be great.
Because I was like, it would be unfair if I just said there was one thing that we did. It won't be true. So first thing that we did, and this is really it's when I just started in the company. So it's almost a decade ago that we started to do this, or maybe 8 years ago. First was the decision to say, what are we really as a company? And that was the first thing that I think was a big inflection point, because that was the first time we said we are a personal excellence company that wants to impact 1 billion lives. So clarity in just saying who we are and what do we do to do for this world, and what are we as a company, was the first thing that kind of threw us in the direction. This is when you saw the new MindValley logo. Before that, if you look up old MindValley logos, you'll see it was like a Comic Sans font writing an M on a circle or something like that. It was a funny font. But the wings originated with the idea of saying who we are, and that's where the identity of MindValley first started to show up, right? That was the first inflection point, the decision of saying who we are. The second inflection point was when we said we are MindValley as one company. You see, before that, we were MindValley, but we were a backgrounds company. If you go to mindvalley.com, and you can go to Wayback Machine, and you can see the evolution of mindvalley.com. You will see our mindvalley.com was a website that promoted hey, you should work for our company, and here is why our culture is cool. So it was more a recruitment side than actually something that tells about the actual work that we did. There was a point where we said, well, why are we hiding? Why are we hiding behind all these different websites? It's more work. It's more authors. Every author has a different website. Every product has a different website. Traffic doesn't scale this way. It was just a pain. So we said, why not? Why can't we stand in front of the line and say we are MindValley, right? So we kind of created the first version of that was called MindValley Academy. Now that is MindValley.com. Eventually, it came out to MindValley.com, and that's the website that you go to today. But first, it was just saying, hey, this is we are a company that's almost like a publisher that nobody really knows that we are the publisher. Then it became, no, we want to take ownership of that, saying MindValley Academy. And now, of course, it says MindValley, right? Thirdly, around the same time when we decided that we are MindValley, we also became really focused on the quality of product. Instead of thinking about how do we make more money, we started to say, how do we get a higher NPS score or a net promoter score? And we increased our focus dramatically into saying, what is it that creates real results for people out there in the world? Now, we would find a model that is now called Quest about 3 or 4, 5 years after we made the decision on focusing on quality. But at the same point in time, that focus changed the way we signed authors and the quality of authors that we signed, which of course also was something that benefited in the growth of the company, or kind of implied the growth of the company. Around the same time, so this is all I'm talking about the first, maybe I'm talking between 2008 and 2012, 13, is where the focus was heavily on culture, company culture, and being able to recruit the best talent and keep them. And that became one big reason or why a lot of people wanted to work with us, who were very smart, passionate people, could make a lot more money working for another company, but wanted to come down and wanted to work for the company MindValley, right? The team happened, product happened, and rebrand of the company happened. And that was a big inflection point for us to be able to go, okay, now we can really, really scale. Around the same time, A-Fest as a brand, which is A-Fest is our event, also started to pick up. So we started to come into physical spaces, and that allowed us also some really good growth. The next inflection point would come when we would come out with Vishen's book, Code of the Extraordinary Mind, which is about 3 years ago at this point, at the time we are having this conversation. Because a book it was almost like if you wanted to see what the philosophy of MindValley is, if you want to see, if anybody wants to see what the philosophy of MindValley is, you can pick up Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and you will see why that is a philosophy. What is it that we stand for? What is it that we stand against? And we were really clear of that. And that book kind of became that document, that one piece of insight that you can look up and you can get introduced to MindValley as a great idea. And that book took off beautifully as well, which was a big inflection point for us as well. Then in the recent times, we of course found many other physical events that which are very different to anything that you might have seen. We introduced an event 2 years ago called MindValley U. I'm not trying to pitch products there. It's just me trying to explain
Sure.
How these things come together, right? So MindValley U was where we said, we'll fly 1,000, 2,000 people to a remote location and get to work with them in a setting of learning, which is what we said we are as a company. We're a learning organization. We are educational tech. And so what happened there is, because of these kind of events, which were so different, everybody that would come to an event like that became a big ambassador of MindValley, because they were like, I see this company as a real company. Because here's what happens with digital companies, right? A lot of us are digital companies, and so all you see is an online thing. But if you want to build a real connection, how does that happen online? It's really hard, right? Because it's a one-way communication almost. It's very hard to, like, you can do some messages back and forth, but it's not really like how you physically speak with someone, right? So that kind of changed the trajectory a lot, because we got a lot of ambassadors who had come to our A-Fest, or who came to MindValley Reunion, or who started to come to our different brands like EverCoach and so forth, to our physical events in MindValley U. And that allowed people to really see the company for what it is in the truest of forms, and have a great time, and became the ambassadors, which again became a viral thing. And this is where the whole, this is why if we say, hey, yeah, we're MindValley, people tend to recognize us. I think it's a lot to do with the physical spaces that we created, because the ambassadors of MindValley are almost fanatic fans, and rightly so, because that's the kind of space that we create for these individuals to come hang out and feel a part of the community, learn together, grow together. And of course, in all of this, while we were doing it, of course, copy and advertising played a big role. But but that is kind of an essential for any company. If you can't really present your offer effectively, there is no way you could be the greatest culture. But if you can't sell that culture to people, if you can't offer that to people in a way where they understand and want to relate to, that wouldn't work. So that was kind of a default. Design was kind of a default. These are things that just happened. So a lot of inflection points. There was no one thing that I could say that this is where MindValley changed. They got recognition from different people in different industries and different type of clients at different points.
Well, it's a good 10 years now.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a 10-year scope I'm talking about. Yeah,
yeah. I mean that's just you're adding bricks every year, and that's what you can do over a decade. Awesome, thank you. What are some of the turning points or big wins from a marketing perspective that you guys have discovered?
So first thing that we found was design. So that was the first thing that we kind of changed, and that was the first time I would say in the space of online marketing, MindValley became a distinguished brand because we started to say, you don't have to sell through ugly, right? And still people swear by ugly designs. And we said, but we are in the long game, and ugly doesn't really build a brand. Ugly just simply sells for the moment.
Yeah.
So that was the first big step that we said for marketing. We would like, would I like to see this web page? If the answer is no, let's not put it up. Right? If I don't like it, I don't like how it looks, I don't like how it feels, this is not what we want to represent. So that was the big thing, first big thing that we did. Secondly, we changed our approach to copy. Our copy, and if you'll go to any of the MindValley, you can go to mindvalley.com, evercoach.com, you will say it's never salesy. You will never feel like somebody's trying to sell you something. You will always see somebody's making an argument for a case, right? That's like the easiest way I can explain it. So all we are doing is we are saying, hey, this is why we propose you may want to look at this. And because of that, it becomes something that, again, people want to stay associated with it a long time. People want to share it because it doesn't feel like you have to do this now. It's not one of those hardcore sales letters. It's more like, hey, this is the reason why it's a great product, and I'm standing by it because it's a great product and you should try it. And that's as simple as that. So that was one of the big marketing shifts that we did that I think helped a lot. Thirdly, I would say was the focus of marketing. Like that was a big turn for us when we said we are not going to do launches. Like we didn't do launches when everybody did launches. There was a time where we said we're not going to do affiliates. We still don't do affiliates. We said we are not going to do affiliates. It wasn't because we have anything against affiliates. It's just because how we want to represent ourselves didn't align. Even if we could make a lot more money by doing affiliates, we just simply said like, this doesn't align. So we're not going to do affiliates. And we kind of honed in and said there's one way we market our products, which is the best way that we think to market product, which is to give as much information as possible to the person that is to make a decision, even if it's a $300 sale, right? So if you look at our landing pages, they're not squeeze pages. We don't do squeeze pages. And the reason is nothing else but saying, if I want this person to really say yes, I want him to say yes or her to say yes. I don't want them to scheme them into saying yes. I want them to say a hell yes. Right. So if you look at the landing pages, they're long. They tell all the information that you'll get on the class. And then we do something that we call master classes, which are not just webinars with slides that will sell you something, but it's actually a training. It's actually, if it's a 60-minute training, which usually is length is anywhere between 60 to 78 minutes, 70, 80 minutes, it would be about 90% will be just pure juicy content. About 5 minutes would be pitch and 5 minutes would be introduction. So it would be like really usable. Every class is where you will walk away with like a deck of notes and so forth. So you can actually take it home and utilize it in different ways. So that's kind of what our marketing shifts were. We also became really aggressive in advertising once we started to work our numbers from a budget perspective instead of return on investment perspective, which is a different approach that depends on companies. Like a lot of smaller companies can't take that approach because they need to stay afloat. But as we started to grow our advertising accounts, we just simply said how much we want to spend. It didn't matter if we made our money back or not. It just, this is how much we want to spend. This is what we are going to spend in each of the brands, and this is how it's going to work.
Very cool. What shopping cart CRM platform do you guys use?
Say that, what shopping carts?
Yeah, or CRM, or like Infusionsoft or something else?
We process our payments through Zora. Maropost is our email sender. Sorry, I just have to think of what are different. We have a lot of internal tech, like all our programs are hosted on our own technology.
Right.
So we own it. Our webinar software is our own technology, which we built. We were thinking to take it mainstream. We just don't want to. We just want to keep it to ourselves. It's just because it's so customized at this point.
Yeah, that's a whole other business endeavor.
Yeah, so we were like, we don't want to do it, and we are not necessarily a technology company or a webinar company,
right?
So we didn't really want to focus on that. We are education tech, so we build technologies to support education. That's what we do. So that's what we do for that. For website building, we use HubSpot. And now we've built an internal tech, so we're testing that one out right now. Tell me what else tools you want to know.
Those are great. That just I'm always kind of curious when you go through a growth curve like you guys have. Tech can be a problem if you don't choose correctly. So
we went through that grind. We chose a lot of wrong tech. We lost a lot of email addresses because of that in the process. We grew with a company called Entreport. We love that company. We loved everything that they did at the time. They were called, like, when we first signed up with them, they were called like Office Autopilot. It's so funny. I was just hanging out with one of their PR person recently at a dinner party I was at, and I was like, wow, I recall meeting Landon Ray, who had just created Office Autopilot, and we started with them. That was our first big software switch. Before that, we were on one of those softwares that you install on your server and send out an email.
Yep,
that's what we were at before. Then we started with Office Autopilot. We outgrew them a couple of years ago. We tried a different company in the middle. I can't recall the name of. Eventually settling to Marpost.
Very good, very good. And then you guys have gone big on YouTube and social media. It looks like starting probably 2 to 3 years ago.
Yep, about 3 years ago.
Yeah, how can you tell us or give us some insights on that? Because I think your YouTube channel, if I remember correctly, is coming up close on 1 million subscribers.
Yes, it'll probably hit more than 1 million this year. So YouTube, we actually only dialed in last year, so in 2018 is when we really dialed into YouTube. Tell me a specific question, because it's just a broad category. It's about saying, hey, I don't want to give a really, I can give a very generic answer, but if you'll ask me a specific question, I might be able to direct of what you're really asking.
Well, for the people who are listening, who are thinking about getting involved in YouTube, are there any really valuable lessons learned or things that have worked particularly well for you guys to help you do that?
So firstly, I think the first lesson to learn is to pick a platform and run with it fully. So we didn't get into YouTube until now, like you said, right? Like only last year is when we said, okay, let's think about YouTube, because we were already so prominent on the Google channel and we were already so prominent on Facebook, is when we said, okay, now we can go on to YouTube. So that's one thing that I think is the first thing to know, is that people try to tackle all of the channels at the same time. And it just doesn't work when you do that, especially when the business cannot afford the leadership in each of the channels. And that's kind of how we think about it. It's like saying, okay, if we want to crush YouTube, we are going to see if we have a leader that can crush YouTube. Does that make sense?
Right.
Right? Because not me or Vishen or somebody on even the leadership sitting down, by leadership, I mean the executive team sitting down saying, oh, how to make YouTube work. No, that's a very on-ground tactical thing. It's somebody who needs to be a leader of YouTube figuring it out. And then we work on saying, okay, this is what we are, this is what we stand for. And then these are the tactical things about YouTube. For example, and these are just generic tactical stuff that you probably have heard somewhere else, but here it is again, in case you haven't, right? Firstly, it's all about keywords. It's all about outperforming the people who are already ranking for those keywords, right? So for example, if you are in the copywriting niche, how to write a killer copy in 7 steps. If somebody already has the number 1 video that ranks, how to write killer copy in 3 steps, right? So you outperform that person by adding more content to it, longer content to it, because YouTube recognizes that a lot more. Plus, of course, going for the keyword killer copy or something like that, right? So you want to start with the long tail, then you go to the short. It's very SEO. So I'm getting into like nitty gritty here, but it's really going through that process of saying, hey, what's the keyword? Let's find the keyword and then go for see which are our material that fits that keyword, if there is any, and then you rank for that. And it's all about tags and keywords and so forth. So that's kind of how we rank really heavily right now on YouTube, is because just the optimization of each of the content pieces is really strong. It is it started with, of course, the longer tail keywords. So it's kind of, if you are it depends on the niche as well. We are very personal development or personal excellence, which means we have really large keywords that we can go for, which means our volume will always be higher than most. It's mindset, it's how to learn fast, how to speak, like things that are really commonly asked for. Whereas if you are in an industry where it's not so much, you will probably not be hitting 1 million subscribers. You'll be mostly going for, hey, I need 10,000 really good subscribers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you guys right at 850,000 subscribers as of the time of recording this, and it looks like you had over the last 30 days about just over 10 million views of your videos and 64 new thousand subscribers. What kind of ROI are you seeing that from a business? What kind of impact are you seeing from that? Is it noticeable? Is it substantial? Is it getting lost in the mix with everything else?
No. It's very noticeable and very substantial. And it's not only YouTube, it's any content marketing. It's all about the retargeting at this point, or all about the audience at this point. I mean, and anybody who's doing any major size business knows this, is that it's all about saying, hey, I'm earning these views. I'm earning these views organically or inorganically, doesn't matter. But what I'm really doing is I'm getting more and more people to watch and see if they like the stuff. And if they do, most likely I can retarget them with more stuff of mine, eventually building a brand and a recognition of the brand so strong that they will make a purchase decision whenever they are ready. So it's basically a content play that we know pays off. It pays off on every platform though. Like, it's not only YouTube, even Facebook. It will pay off. Instagram, it pays off.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest keys to success in that is a really disciplined, systematic content production and distribution plan.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you have experience with in the team that you could maybe share some insights around?
So I am a systems guy. I don't necessarily integrate at this point. I don't go into the nitty-gritties of each of our systems. But my work with MindValley was mostly around systems and marketing. Those are two areas that I focus on mostly. So that's why I was like the CTO of the company, CMO of the company, all of that stuff. That I did the whole gamut, CEO of the company. So systems are all built by outcome that you desire, right? It's a reverse engineering process than an engineering process. Because everybody has a system. We just don't acknowledge it that we have a system, because we think we are creative, and so it just happens, but it doesn't. There is a system to every madness, because as human beings, we are certainty driven dramatically. And because we are certainty driven, like for example, there's a particular way you like to start your car and move your car or back your car, park your car. Everything is a systematic thing. You just think it's not systematic because you think, no, I just drive my car because it's an auto system for you. But that's the same for business. Everything in business that operates is a system. It's for your choosing if you want to use that system consistently because you want the consistent result, or you're going to fall off the radar and then have unpredictable results, right? So for example, if you want to get into content marketing, if somebody wants to do a YouTube channel or a Facebook channel or whatever that is, if you're looking to do that, there's the video that worked, like the first live that you did that worked, or the first posted video that you do worked, or whatever that is that worked. There was a system to it. You now want to experiment because you don't want to repeat the process. But the thing is, it already worked. You gotta go, okay, this is what worked. Let me reverse engineer this and do more of this. And the more you can do more of that, the more results you're going to end up getting, right? So that's kind of how any system really is designed. You look for what's the most working thing that you have. It won't work as well as it's working for somebody else, and it doesn't have to. It does have to work the best version for you, right? It's the best, highest performing thing for you. You say, this is the highest performing thing for me. You break it down. There's probably a system or a method to that madness. And you take that and then you repeat it. You repeat it every single day consistently by making a schedule around it. These are just pointers that entrepreneurs always drop off on, right? We don't make a schedule. We just go, okay, I'll show up and I'll look at my email and that defines my day. Well, guess what? You're not going to be able to consistently create content then, or create marketing or advertising or whatever that is, right? You got to have a system around it. You got to have a schedule around it. So that's kind of how we design systems, or at least I design systems, is I look for the best converting thing or the thing that has gotten me a particular result. And then you reverse engineer on what you did that got you that result, and you do more of it.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. Very cool. Well, I'd like to transition a little bit into your book, which you just came out with in the last month, called Live Big, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Passion, Practicality, and Purpose. So first question that I want to ask you is, what inspired you to take the time to write a book? Because that's always a big endeavor.
So for me, so there was a point in my life where I was running MindValley, and then it kind of, I was still pretty young. I'm still am. It was about 3 years ago. I was 31 and I was running the company, and I was just like at 31. I don't know why, but I lost my drive. I kind of got burnt out. I was doing really good work. Like the work was amazing, but everything else in life was just not there. And I was like, this can't be the greatest standard or the greatest possibility of my life. There has got to be more. That sent me on a soul journey, a journey to just really rediscover and just find the honest me. Like I didn't ask for what's the best version of me. I didn't ask for how I can be better or anything like that. I was like, just like, who am I? What is it? What is the honestly me thing in this space? And and that allowed me to reconnect a lot with myself, and that got me to get answers to a few questions. Firstly, was honestly, me as a writer. I like to write a lot. I always wrote as a teenager. I wrote before teenager. I wrote, and I just loved writing and reading. And I was reading a lot, but I wasn't writing. So that was the first thing. That was a discovery. There was the discovery of saying I want to live a full life. I want to be a healthiest as I possibly can be. I want to be able to have the time to spend with family and friends and so forth, which also got me to redesign my life and start companies in a way where I not only make as much or more money than I was making before, but at the same point in time, also be able to enjoy the quality of life. And that integration created the opportunity for me to be able to find space for anything that I really choose to do in today's time. Today, I have the time to be able to write a book if I want to write. I have the time to be able to go on long vacations if I choose to go, which I am going in like a month and a half from now. So I get to do whatever I want to do while making equal or more amount of money than I made before. It was just by design. I just didn't want a life where I was always chasing. I wanted to, or if I wanted to chase, I only wanted to chase myself and my version of myself, because I just thought that's what is most joyous to me, honestly, and most true to me, most fun to me, and it is what it is.
Very cool. So those questions are really insightful. Did you come up with those yourself, or was this process guided by a book or something like Lifebook or a course that you went through to help guide you through that journey, essentially?
Actually, a lot of things. It wasn't one thing, because I was a mess. I was a mess when I was about 3 years ago. I was quitting my first relationship, which was making me a mess. My health was not in the best place, and I was giving up something which was pretty much the thing that I wanted for a really long time, which is to run MindValley, because I'm just so passionate about what we do here. So I was basically such a mess that everything in my life at that point felt like it's all going to just like finish. Like this is going to end me, is where I was, and which is why I think I just had no fear of saying, hey, I'm rediscovering myself, and it'll take the time it'll take. And I was fortunate that I was in an ecosystem like MindValley, so I had the exposure to be able to go on my journey without doubting that I will be able to come out strong in whatever version it will be. And so it involved a lot of seminars, a lot of books, a lot of self-reflection. Honestly, was the biggest element. Like I would go away for days and not contact anyone until I found the answer to the question that I was asking at the minute.
Mm.
My now wife played a very big role in really being able to bring an external perspective and external honesty of somebody. At that time, we were just acquaintances. We just knew each other and we were friends. And she was just like being honest and true to me, saying, hey, what is it that she feels I'm not showing up as, or what is it that the questions that I should ask myself as just a friend. And that was a big help for me at the time, because it helped me really look at things also not internally, but also somebody else from the outside guiding me on things that I couldn't see, because I was me, right? So I was in the box. I couldn't see from outside in.
Right, exactly. What were some of the other big questions that you asked yourself? Because I think those first two were really powerful. Were there any others?
Values. I think identifying my values was a big thing for me. Is to know how, because we know happiness is kind of like a state, right? You're in and out of happiness. You're happy in a minute and then you're not happy, but you can always stay in a positive state, or you can always stay in a joyous state, right? Or be optimistic about life, right? That's at least those are the states that you could do. And there was and because of those, I was like, how can I be in this at all times? And that discovery happened when I found my values of what is it that when I operate from these places, it gives me the maximum joy, even if I have no return in whatever I did as an action based on those values. So that's kind of what was a big differential for me and was a big breakthrough for me to be able to really know what is it that I want to be at all times, or where is it that I want to operate from at all times.
Can you share some of those?
Yeah, so my two biggest values are love and service, which is what I wear on my sleeve, I wear on my t-shirts, I share it with everybody. Love and service. So I always want to be able to be of service to myself and to others. And I always want to continue to love myself and everybody around me. And I want to be able to express that love as in any different way that I possibly can. Till the time I am operating from a place of love and service, it allows me to be in a state of joy and gratitude and happiness and so forth.
Very cool. Very cool. So we talked about what inspired you to write the book. What is it about specifically?
The book is really so what I found is, so in the past 3 years, as I was starting my own companies and just being a partner of MindValley and so forth, I also found that because I want to be in a place of service, I also like to consult and coach entrepreneurs. And in the process, what happened was that most of the time, when I would work with entrepreneurs, I found that the reason why they were not able to move past their growth curves or not be able to create more profits or more growth in their companies or be able to be more aligned to who they truly are was less to do with strategy, more to do with perspective. It was the way they looked at their business is what made the difference in the business. And we've been able to record anywhere between 30 to 100 to sometimes 600% with one of our recent clients' growth in revenue and profitability of the companies. And it's mostly always a perspective shift. It's just the way they looked at things. Like, for example, how do we look at growing a company? Most of the people think, well, just spend more money. Or, well, you just need to get better marketing. Most of the time, that's the wrong answer. Not all the times, but most of the time, especially if your company has already got some traction, if it's already got the product. It's not about the marketing. It's not about spending more money on ads. It's about building a team most of the time or building a system a lot of times. So it's more about how you're looking at the view of your business. If I can change that, I can change the story. It's like what we talked about in the starting of our conversation, right? It wasn't MindValley was figuring out how to write better copy. We never really tried to figure out how to write better copy. We just figured out how to write copy in a consistent way, which aligned with our values, which is a perspective shift for building a larger enterprise versus hustling every year, right? So that's kind of where the book goes. The book goes into perspective and says it has a lot of systems as well, but really my intention was to say, if you're challenged on a day or you're looking for growth ideas, you should be able to flip over to any page in the book and it'll give you a perspective that will probably change the tangent of your growth and of your growth and of your company's growth. And you will probably be able to associate back saying, when I shifted that reality, when I shifted the way I looked at that thing, is when I really changed the traction of my company. So that's really what Live Big is about. Live Big is about giving entrepreneurs the ability to have a choice, to be able to say, I can choose to work really hard. I can choose to not work really hard. I can choose to grow my company by 30%. I can choose to grow it by 300%. And all of it is possible till the time I understand that it's about perspective. And I can choose that perspective the day I choose to have that perspective.
Very cool. I'm sitting here flipping through the pages as we're talking, and I love I love the size, and that this is a book someone can read in 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. It's not a Tim Ferriss dictionary that'll take you a couple of months to work through. And I want to ask you, from a publishing perspective, what that process was like. It looks like you went through a third-party publisher, Ben Bella, instead of maybe doing a self-publishing endeavor. Mm-hmm. What insights do you have for anyone who's thinking about writing a book right now?
So I would say if you're writing a book that helps your business, self-publish it 100%. And the reason for that is, so for example, before writing Live Big, I wrote another book called The Book of Coaching, which is the book very specifically to our market on EverCoach. And we self-published that book because the margins to work with publishers is actually nothing. You get a small advance or a big advance depending on the amount of audience that you already have. And then basically after that, you're kind of left to their mercy in a way. They're not very good marketers. Even the bigger publishers are not really good marketers. They don't really get you on big platforms. You pretty much as an author do the work yourself, right? You call your friends and you call your colleagues and you kind of get on different podcasts and shows and so forth. So it's not a very smart thing to go with a publisher unless you're looking for a big first collect, which is saying, hey, I want to go in and I want to get a big advance. And that's why I'm doing it, because you're not interested in writing just for the sake of writing. So that's really why you should go to a publisher. Publisher is more a mass distribution system. Like book of coaching, you won't find in the bookstore. Live Big, you'll find at the airport, right? So it's everywhere, right? So that's really the difference of why I said Live Big versus book of coaching. If I was to write my next book, I would probably self-publish it till the time it was associated to a business. Live Big has no business model, really. It's an expression of my creativity. And it does now fit into a business model. But when I wrote it, I had no intentions to build a business around Live Big. It became an intention after, because that's just an entrepreneur's mind, right? It's like, oh, now I have a book. It's working. People love it. What can I do more, right? And that's what is giving the birth to the business, but it was never intended to build a business. Whereas the book of coaching was the intention of building a business. So it really depends on why you're writing the book. If you're writing because you want to be mainstream and you just want to book out with a publisher and it should be in the bookstores, go write a book with a publisher. But if you are hoping that book will actually help you build your business, self-publish it. Don't worry about a publisher. It's a waste of your time.
Yeah, and it doesn't work out financially, because if you go through a publisher and you want copies, you're still going to have to pay at least 50% of the price of the book. So if it's $20, your cost is going to be between $10 and $13 just to buy copies for your friends and family members.
Absolutely. But you could go creative on that, though. And the modern day publishers, the ones that are not the traditional old school larger publication houses, the new ones, they are able to do hybrid deals, which basically means that they will not give you an advance or give you a really small advance, but you can get your own book for like 40% of the price or 30% of the price. So you get it in single digits versus double digits. And that's kind of still you are in a publisher, but at the same point in time, you have a hybrid deal. So you're not losing a lot of money in getting a book.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, man, this has been a really interesting conversation. Are there any final pieces of wisdom that you'd like to share with everybody listening today?
Well, most of the time, I feel entrepreneurs feel like the only way to build business is to look at somebody else's business and build it. I'll invite you to look at your business in your own perspective. Know that you always have a choice of saying, what is it that your business should look like? Copying doesn't build great businesses. Creativity builds great businesses. I invite you to tap into that wonderful creativity that you have as an entrepreneur and build a business of your desires that is designed exactly how you would like it to be designed, with the life design around it, and not just how much more can you work unless that is your desire. So really the invitation is you have a choice. Don't copy, just create from your creativity, and you will end up having a beautiful, wonderful company that you will really, really love working with.
Yeah, I can second that. Whenever I've started a new business, I've always started with, the end goal in mind, as far as what am I passionate about? What gives me energy? What am I interested in? What do I want that business to look like from a lifestyle and financial perspective? Meaning, how much work do I want to put into this versus lifestyle? And then you can just backward engineer a blueprint to build that out for you. And it's worked out well so far. So, yeah, agreed. Yeah. Well, Ajit, where can people go to connect with you? Obviously, they can go to Amazon and pick up a copy of Live Big. But do you have a personal website or any other resources that you'd like to give out?
Well, you can go to evercoach.com if you want to look at our work. If you're a coach or a consultant or a trainer, you can go to evercoach.com. We have some phenomenal products that helps you become a better coach. So that will be great for you. Of course, if you're looking for more related to my personal brand, you can go to ajitnawalkha.com, which is my personal website, or you can go to globalgridinstitute.com, which is our consulting company.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time today. This was a real pleasure, and I can't wait to dive into the book. Just thumbing through the pages here now, looking through the chapter titles. This is right up my alley, but it's going to be up the alley that everybody here is listening as well. So, guys, I would definitely go pick up a copy. This is a book that I think will really make a big difference in your life. So, Ajit, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely. Well, guys, gals, thank you for listening as always, and we'll see you next week. Take care.